Hi, everyone, and welcome to another exciting edition of Fantasy Sports Review. But before we get started with our show, we'd like to thank Phil Hargis for directing the show, along with Steve Mullen. They're doing a great job, as always. They're behind the scenes. We really appreciate it, guys. Week 7, great matchups. We'll get to that in just a second. I'd like to introduce to you my co-host for the show, Clara Markowski. Clara, we haven't done a show this year. It's first time
excited.
back.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait to get into it. She went to the Redskins-Bears game and brought the Skins good fortune. It's probably why they pulled it out in the end.
That was probably the most exciting game I've ever been to. Awesome game to go to. I mean, just the morale was just awesome. Everybody was having a good time. Liked seeing all the. And there was a lot of Bears fans there, surprisingly. I didn't think there would be as much Bears fans as there were, but it was nice to send them home.
Well, 95,000 at FedEx Field, you have to somehow fill all the seats, and unfortunately,
it's such a it's such a diverse area with everybody moves here, so.
Right, so you're going to catch that, but again, a great game. We'll dive more into those players and everything like that. But Week 7's come and gone in the books. We're almost halfway through the season already. Fantasy team wise, I guess we're just talking to you. Your fantasy teams are 4-3. My big team that I care a lot about is 5-2. So it looks like we're on a good start. But it's not about us; it's about you guys. So let's jump right in. I mean, what were some of the things that stood out in Week 7 that you saw? Fantasy-wise, game-wise, that
Well, you had a lot of with games. There's people that are starting out horribly. The Giants got their first win against Minnesota because, like I said, I don't know who ever would pick up Josh Freeman ever. And then another Pittsburgh got their second win against the Super Bowl champs. So there were definitely a lot of upsets. And then, of course, who could forget the undefeated Broncos losing to the Indianapolis Colts, which was another exciting game.
Huge game and great fantasy numbers if you had some Broncos on your team and Colts players. Andrew Luck again, showing why he's a top 5 quarterback, guy you could have gotten in the 6th, 7th, maybe 8th or 9th round. But RG3, up until this point, rushing-wise was non-existent, and then they finally kind of took the handcuffs off, and look what he did. He rushes for almost 90 yards. Threw 3 touchdown passes. Just played awesome coming down the stretch too. Again, kind of leading that team to victory. That was a great game. Then you also saw, Luke McCown coming in for Jay Cutler. If you had Jay Cutler on your team, you're like, oh no, he gave you negative points.
188.
But Matt Forte, 3 touchdowns. I've been saying this all along. We've always talked about Matt Forte and the value that he brings. He can catch the ball to the backfield. He can run the ball. And they have a great offensive line in Chicago. So, and then also the emergence of Alshon Jeffrey. If you had him on your bench, you're kind of loving it because everyone's kind of attracted to Brandon Marshall, and he's getting double covered, triple team sometimes. Alshon Jeffrey, 6'4", big frame, can catch the ball in the red zone. So we kind of saw how good he did. But again, there's that game. Another game like the Broncos Colts. I mean, Peyton Manning again couldn't pull it out, but it gives you great numbers.
Oh, yeah, he still had great numbers, but, the turnovers is what hurt them. Tillman had that last fumble at the end, and they just couldn't get through. Honestly, going through their matchups, I said if the Broncos are going to lose, probably would be to the Colts because I think the Colts are a great team this year.
Yeah, and especially in Indianapolis as well. And the Colts defense, give them some credit because they put a lot of pressure on Peyton Manning early, and they're up 12 at halftime, and they kind of fumbled it a little bit in the second half. But again, Andrew Luck and in losing Reggie Wayne, first of all, that was a key injury.
I know
because. Now you're stuck. You have a number 1 wide receiver. Now you're like, oh my God, what just happened? You need a backup plan. And that's why we always kind of say, watch out for those injuries. But that was a fluke play, especially in the last series of the game when they kind of had it in hand. Reggie Wayne going down, so that's going to kill some of the fantasy teams. I don't know if you had them.
And speaking of injuries, there were so many injuries this week. I can name the Nick Foles injury, Sam Bradford out for the year. Jay Cutler out for 4 games. Jermichael Finley, who might be a career-ending
Have him
injury,
on my team too.
Which is awful because he's such a great player, and it's so upsetting because people we talk about out for the season, but he might be out. He might be done for good.
I know, and that's really troubling, especially if you're a Packers fan. He was playing so well, and he didn't have a great season last season. Kind of steps up and. that kind of kills them a little bit because they're out without James Jones, Randall Cobb, and now Jermichael Finley. So now you have the guy Boykins coming in. Hopefully he emerges as a top threat because they need him now, and they have James Jones coming back from injury should help. Jordy Nelson's a beast, but they have this guy Quarles that's going to step in. He's a second-year player, hasn't been game tested yet. He's played very sparingly in his first 2 years in the NFL, so let's see if he can step up. Moving right along to the quarterbacks, let's look at some of the top performers and kind of some guys that we really didn't really see coming that was going to hit kind of like a rough patch is Nick Foles. I mean, you said it, he got injured, but he was the first 3 quarters of that. He played like a horrible quarterback. I mean, the guy was. I thought the Dallas Cowboys, Philadelphia Eagles game was going to be a shootout. 2 bad defenses, kind of like the last team with the ball wins at the end of the game. That didn't happen.
Right. No, and I mean it was a shame going that they had to put Barkley in. He definitely wasn't the guy for that game.
he comes in and throws three picks in 1 quarter. I mean, and the Dallas defense, give him credit too because they kind of almost pitched a shutout there. They won 17-3, and I mean really that holding the Philadelphia Eagles to 3 points. I mean I was absolutely shocked. So that was one of the games that I thought was going to be a high-scoring game. Start everyone on the Cowboys. Start everyone on the Eagles. Nick Foles is going to blow up. He's going to be the starter for the rest of the season. I was wrong. Now Michael Vick comes right back in, and so.
And honestly, I mean, you have to give some credit to the Philadelphia Eagles defense too, because they did only hold Dallas to 17 points, and they were supposed to be the 31st worst defense in the NFL coming into the season. So, I mean, with all the Des Bryant, Jason Witten, and even Romo hasn't looked half bad this year. I would give them some credit. Right.
And then some other games too. The Atlanta Falcons. I mean, without Roddy White, without Julio Jones, Harry Douglas steps up. And Matt Ryan played a great game.
Jacquizz Rodgers steps up, didn't have barely any rushing yards, but he had 2 receiving touchdowns. And
that was a big win. I mean, I know they were playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but looking down this list, something that really stands out to you is a guy like Andy Dalton. I mean, he throws 3 touchdown passes, one of the top performers, and he really had to step his game up in Detroit, leads him to victory. This guy kind of struggled in the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season, but now he's kind of playing in his A games back, and now he's got A.J. Green, who, for the first 2-3 weeks was kind of non-existent. Now he stepped up, and now he's paying dividends to fantasy owners.
Yeah, he had that week 1, he had about 20 fantasy points, and then the rest of the time it's just been 6-7 points here and there. But I mean, Cincinnati needs a guy like A.J. Green to step up so they can win some games, because that division, the AFC North, is very close. Mm-hmm. Still, it's still anyone's game. So you need those guys to step up,
especially on the road. That was a huge win for the Bengals. Especially just moving forward throughout the season. They're going to be tough. They play the Jets in Cincinnati. It's a huge 4 o'clock game on Sunday. That's going to be, I'm hoping, obviously, I'm a Pats fan. Hopefully the Jets lose. But we'll talk about that Pats-Jets game. And, where's Tom Brady been? I mean, this is a guy who's probably the 3rd, 4th quarterback taken in the draft. He's really been non-existent this year. And you can blame him on the wide receivers, I guess, but I mean, you don't want to make excuses, but some of the throws that he had Gronkowski deep down the middle of the field in the 4th quarter and in overtime and overshot him twice. I can't remember a time when Tom Brady actually did that.
Yeah, no, I agree. He's been non-existent, which is, I keep wanting him to be non-existent because the person I'm playing in my big money league has Tom Brady this week. So hopefully, but again, Gronkowski's back, and Gronkowski can pretty much catch anything. You know what I mean? Give him in his direct vicinity area, and he's making the catch.
Well, that's definitely a big pickup for all Gronkowski owners. I mean, he played a very good game. But just kind of shifting gears a little bit, the running backs. And we saw, like you said, Jacquizz Rodgers, a guy that without Steven Jackson, I know the past few games he hasn't done anything. Jason Snelling was kind of handcuffing him at that running back spot, but he comes in and has a great game. And then Matt Forte with 3 rushing touchdowns, caught a few balls. Frank Gore, and then Roy Halou. I mean, you know who? He comes in, he missed all of last season. Now everyone's kind of scrambling on the waiver wire to pick him up. Do you think that's going to be a good acquisition?
I mean, Alfred Morris is still the number 1, but, I mean, that's what the Redskins need to do. We need to switch it up. We need to trick them into. So I do think that's great. I mean, am I going to start him? Probably not in my league, because I have Eddie Lacy, Adrian Peterson, you know what I mean? So he's not going to be my starter. But, I mean, with all the injuries and, Arian Foster hurt, I think he's a great pickup.
Yeah, I think so, too, especially on this waiver wire coming up. If you can get a guy like Roy Halou, just kind of adds, I guess, to that the highly versatile team that you might have. But then running out the top 10, Eddie Lacy has been an absolute beast for the Packers. Jamal Charles, Chris Johnson, and then two guys who are not really on the top 10, Peyton Hillis and Zach Stacy. I would stay away from Peyton Hillis because that game on Sunday was awful. He runs like no offense or anything, he runs like he's 50 years old. And, I mean, as long as he can lower his shoulders, he'll be okay. But, a guy like Peyton Hillis, I mean,
and honestly, I
thought he was out of football.
I forgot about Peyton Hillis as well. He had that one great season, and everyone can say that he had the curse of the Madden on the cover because the rest of the seasons have been awful. But yeah, Zach Stacy from St. Louis had a big game. I mean, these guys who are kind of unknown, if he's available on the waiver wire, pick him up. I think this season with Adrian Peterson playing the last two games Adrian Peterson has played in, and he's been terrible. Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you now, now the NFL is becoming more of like a pass-happy league? I mean, moving forward, next year's drafts, are you going to take a running back in the first round or first two rounds?
We were talking about that 2 shows ago with Phil, and that's how I've always been, running back first. But now I feel like they're a dime a dozen. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And it's definitely more of a pass-heavy game, and you have these awesome quarterbacks like Manning and Rodgers and Breeze. They pass more than they hand off the ball.
And they accumulate the most points. Look at Andrew Luck. I mean, I've had him on my fantasy team. He's already eclipsed almost 150 yards. 150 points already in 7 weeks.
And if he doesn't throw a touchdown, he's going to run it in.
Absolutely. He's very versatile. I guess you could say he's very multifaceted, multidynamic. But he did have a good core to throw to. Now he's got to kind of step up with Hayward Bay. Now having to emerge as number two. T.Y. Hilton, if you have him, you're sitting pretty because that's going to be his favorite target. And then you also have Kobe Fleener as well, their tight end. But some guys definitely need to emerge. But then the wide receivers. Now let's get into some of these guys. You look at the top ones, like Calvin Johnson. Finally played like Calvin Johnson.
Finally, I mean that.
Finally played like
Calvin
Calvin
Johnson. Did you see that touchdown catch when he had two guys? I mean, he's a monster.
Well, he's finally playing like Megatron, and then obviously
Vincent Jackson.
Vincent Jackson's been a beast ever since because he's Mike Glennon's favorite target. I mean, the guy was targeted 23 times against. I know the Falcons' secondary is terrible, but he was targeted 23 times. They're throwing the ball 23 times. You're going to at least catch half those balls.
Right.
So again, Vincent Jackson, even though Mike Glennon's a rookie quarterback, he's still getting the job done in Tampa. Then Eric Decker. Playing absolute lights out. I think he's emerging as the number one guy and Peyton's favorite target this season. He's always open.
Yeah, it's frustrating too because I have Demaryius Thomas in one of my leagues and he's just not getting the ball. He's just being covered really well. But I mean, it's kind of hard too as having players from the Denver Broncos because there's so many good receivers that start all of them because one of them is bound to get the ball.
Exactly. Someone's going to blow up. And then you kind of round out the top five. You see a guy like Harry Douglas. But without Roddy White and Julio Jones, someone has to pick up the slack there in Atlanta because they can't run the ball 45 times with Jacquizz Rodgers. These guys 5'4". And then Jared Boykin finally, he steps up as a number two because James Jones and Cobb are injured, and now Finley's hurt. I mean, so that's a guy that you need to pick up as well, like Roy Lou, Jared Boykin. Jeremy Curley is on the waiver wire as well. Brendan Gibson. It looks like Mike Wallace. His days are, he has not played that well. Then you look at Darius Hayward Bay, caught a touchdown pass. Steve Smith, Kendall Wright, Des Bryant again didn't find the end zone, but still caught 8 balls for $110. Mm-hmm. That's pretty big. So, and then you look at running at the top 15, a guy like Mike Brown, you could easily get on the waiver wire, and Hayward Bay. If you can get those two guys, they can definitely fill in. There are definitely fill-in players on bye. Hayward Bay is a great pickup only because his 4.25 speed. He's going to catch a lot, and if you get a lot of points for bonuses, catching like 45, 50-yard touchdown passes, 60 yards, maybe 80. That's a guy you should definitely look into. So a lot of good things happening in the Colts. But, you said it, Jerry Michael Finley, a huge injury. So kind of shifting gears back to the tight ends a little bit. They're like a dime a dozen. You really can't pick. There's, two or three guys that are top flight, and then everybody else.
Right. And, and now, with, like for Washington, Jordan Reed out of Florida, he stepped up. Fred Davis goes through injury and, hasn't really been playing, and you need a guy like Jordan Reed to step up. And you know what? Give me the number one position, and
he has,
earned
and he's
it.
taking it, and he's flying with it. And then Rob Gronkowski comes back, catches 8 for 114. Jordan Cameron, Jermichael Finley obviously probably will be out for the season. And then Julius Thomas, who, ever since week 1 has just really emerged as a top flight guy. But a couple guys that aren't on this, like Charles Clay from Miami. I was watching some of that game against Buffalo. He was blanketed. That's another thing too. That Charles Clay, I still view him as a top, even though he's not in the top 15 this week. Is still a top flight tight end. But it's kind of like you have the three tight ends. You have Gronkowski, who didn't play the last 6 games, and now he's playing again. Jimmy Graham and Jordan Cameron, who have been doing it, week in and week out, and Julius Thomas as well. And then you have everybody else. Kobe Fleener, you could have gotten on the waiver wire. Delaney Walker, Tyler Eifert caught his first touchdown pass, rookie from Cincinnati. Jermaine Grisham, catching balls for Cincinnati as well. And then Vernon Davis, who had that monster game, and then only got targeted, I think, 7 times and caught 4 balls for 60 yards. You never know. The tight ends just are it's very fickle. It's very up and down.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like the only one who's had a consistent game in the past 7 weeks or whatever is I'm blanking out, Julius Thomas from the Broncos.
Denver.
Because look at the list. Like Gates, Jimmy Graham, they're not even on the list this time. So I agree with you, and it's all about who the quarterback wants to throw to.
Right. You're right. Antonio Gates was not on there, and I think the first 3 or 4 games he reminds you of the old Antonio Gates, but again, kind of. There's a lot of pieces in that offense to go around in San Diego, and he didn't. And against the Jacksonville Jaguars, you would have thought that he would caught at least 2 or 3 balls, but he didn't. And if you started him, he probably got 1 or 2 points. So, but yeah, there's that kind of rounds out the top performers. And like we say, it varies week to week, matchup to matchup. Bye weeks are crucial. Obviously we didn't see the Saints play last week; they were on a bye, so Jimmy Graham, Drew Brees, but they're back again. But let's kind of get into the matchups here a little bit for Week 8, and it starts with the game on Thursday night. Tampa Bay is at home against Carolina. We know Carolina's defense. We were talking about it earlier. They're a top 3 defense in the NFL. What do you expect out of the top players for Tampa Bay? And do you start their rookie running back for Tampa Bay? Even though Doug Martin's injured.
Against Carolina defense?
A lot of people are picking this guy up, and it's like, to me, I don't really see who's going to emerge as the backup in Tampa, but I can tell you this right now, they're going to be throwing the football in Tampa Bay because they're going to be down at least 10 to 14 or 21 points in the 4th quarter. So if you have Vincent Jackson,
start Vincent Jackson.
You should definitely start Vincent Jackson. Cam Newton finally came into his own this past week. That was big. Steve Smith is still one of his top targets. I say you start Steve Smith. If you have Greg Olsen, start him. I would never start a Carolina running back. D'Angelo Williams has been very up and down all season long.
Mike Tolbert's been getting most of the touchdowns too. He's the goal line guy. And again, if you have Carolina defense, start him because they're emerging as the number 2 defense in the NFL.
And if you have Mike Glennon in a 2-quarterback league like I do, maybe start him. But if you can find an alternative, definitely sit him on the bench. But that game's going to be, like I said, the Thursday night game. Those are always kind of dull fantasy point wise. So kind of beware and stay away. Another intriguing matchup coming up too. Patriots are playing. I kind of spaced there. Patriots roll into, or I'm sorry, let's go into some other games too. So San Francisco at Jacksonville. San Francisco, you're probably going to crush Jacksonville. I would not start anyone in Jacksonville. Start everyone in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. What do you kind of see in this game?
San Francisco is going to blow them out. Start San Francisco D. Start everybody.
If you have Colin Kaepernick, start him as well. I think Jacksonville's given up at least 20 points or more to opposing quarterbacks.
If you're in a suicide pool, San Francisco would be a good pick right now as well.
Right. The next game on the slate, Cleveland at Kansas City. I kind of see this one as like a low-scoring game. Maybe start Jamal Charles, maybe start Jordan Cameron. I know Brandon Whedon's been benched for Jason Campbell, so maybe obviously stay away from that. But even Josh Gordon, this is kind of like a tryout for Josh Gordon because I heard a lot of people are saying he's going to get traded. So he might have a big game in this one because there's going to be a lot of scouts there looking at him and seeing what he can do against a good Kansas City defense.
And again, Kansas City's defense is great because they've held all of their opponents to 17 points or less, which is awesome. So definitely start Kansas City D. Start Jamal Charles. That's pretty much it.
Yeah,
I
right.
wouldn't start Alex Smith.
No, he's not good.
No, he's
and
not.
And then now, okay, Miami at New England. That's going to be I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. Now, obviously have to start Tom Brady. If you have somebody else that might do better, I mean, I'm kind of looking at Carson. If you have like a guy like Carson Palmer who's going up against an Atlanta secondary that's just been beaten and torn up, you might have to start him. Tom Brady has been playing well. Miami's got a stout defense, but look for guys like Brandon Bolden, running back, and also Stephen Ridley too, who's emerging as a nice red zone threat. And I mean, he's not catching as many balls that he caught last season, but he's still doing damage inside the red zone.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game as well because, I mean, Miami just got upset by the Buffalo Bills. They're mad. The New England just got upset by the Jets. So another divisional game. Everyone's mad.
everyone's, they need a win. I mean, this is, Miami started out 3-0. They've kind of faltering as of late, and New England the same way. They definitely need a win right here. But like I said, I think it's going to be a better game than people expect, or with scoring-wise. The next game, Buffalo at New Orleans. I guess if you have Buffalo, if you have Fred Jackson, Stevie Johnson is still a little gimped up, but I think that's your play right there. If you have a tight end on bye, start Scott Chandler. He's a good tight end, but everyone for New Orleans, bombs away. They're playing in the Dome again.
Yep, absolutely. You got to start everyone from New Orleans, maybe except the running backs, because Drew Brees likes to throw. So Jimmy Graham, Colston, Brees, start everybody.
Right. And then Dallas and Detroit. I mean, the fast track in Detroit, Dallas is, they came off a huge
really
win.
good game.
I think it is too. I don't see it as high scoring as I predicted last week that they're going to play it against Philadelphia, but I still think it's going to be a great game. It's not going to bore you at all. These guys, Tony Romo and Matthew Stafford, two elite quarterbacks. Definitely this season have been playing very well. And the emergence of Calvin Johnson. I mean, it looks like he's back from his knee injury. So let's see what kind of damage he can do. And then also Joyke Bell is still a little gimped up, so Reggie Bush still might have a great game. But then if you're Dallas, start Terrence Williams, Shelv, Miles Austin.
Witten.
But yeah,
you got to start those guys.
And I think. What do you think? Do you think it's going to be a high-scoring game?
I don't know, because their defense, they're okay. Their defense is okay. They're not great. They're probably like middle of the road. But both team needs a win. And as a Skins fan, like I'm going to be rooting for Detroit because the NFC East is still anybody's game.
Right. And then now we saw the winless Giants in what was probably the most boring game on a Monday night I've ever seen. I turned off after the third quarter. They're now playing. They're in Philadelphia with Michael Vick back. The Giants' defense is lousy. I don't know how they held the Minnesota Vikings to no touchdowns or no scores on their offense, but I guess Josh Freeman, kind of dumped up for him. But what do you see in this game? I mean, do you see Philadelphia's offense getting back on track, or is it going to be the Philadelphia offense that we saw last weekend against Dallas?
No, I mean, I definitely think that they need Vic back. I'm going to take Vic all day over Barkley. Just, he's more experienced, and Philadelphia's coming off a loss, so they're mad. Giants are trying to get back in it, so they're still mad. Honestly, it's probably going to be a pretty good game.
I think you're right. I think if obviously Eli Manning's a spot start. Philadelphia's defense is not that good. Do you start Peyton Hillis? Maybe if someone else is on a bye, you start Peyton Hillis. You start Akeem Nicks, obviously, because he's going to get a lot of attention thrown his way. But other than that, you hit it right in the head. Michael Vick comes back. Kind of got to speed up the next round of these games at 4 o'clock. And there's some good 4 o'clock games. We talked about the Jets, Cincinnati. If you have, Cincinnati's defense played really well in Detroit, look for that momentum to kind of carry on. But the Jets' defense
have been playing excellent.
Absolutely.
And I always say the defense wins games, and their secondary is awesome. So I think
you saw what they did against Tom Brady.
Right.
Antonio Allen had the pick six to start off the second half, and Antonio Cromartie shuts off that one part of the field that you obviously can't throw to. And Laurent Landry's been playing well too at a safety spot. In their front four with Muhammad Wilkerson has been playing lights out. So maybe Cincinnati has a better time because it's at home, but I don't see Andy Dalton repeating that performance.
I agree.
All right, Pittsburgh and Oakland. Always tough to go to the black hole and play, but Ben Roethlisberger always seems to have his best games in Oakland. I don't know why, but he always does. Him and Emmanuel Sanders have been quite the combination. So those guys, you might want to start. You might want to start those two in Oakland.
Oakland still can't really get it together. They're coming off of a bye.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see.
And then Terrell Pryor coming back. You're right. To come back from a bye, I wouldn't start him. Steelers defense played really well against the Baltimore Ravens. So again, this should be a kind of a blowout. I think Pittsburgh wins this game. And then Atlanta at Arizona, another 4:00 game. And this, I'll tell you what, I think it's going to be another high-scoring affair. I think Carson Palmer, who threw for almost 350 yards last game against the Seahawks, finds the end zone a couple times. Look for Larry Fitzgerald to do well. But who else on this Falcons team? I mean, really needs to emerge. I mean, Tony Gonzalez, Harry Douglas, but without Julio Jones and Roddy White, it's going to be a tough game.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, I'm going to start Matt Ryan. He's my fantasy quarterback. I'm going to start Jaquise. But again, I mean, you got to start Douglas. These guys got to step it up. For all these
Right. And
injuries.
Atlanta can still come back. They're still in the thick of things in that division. So it'll be very interesting. Now, the best game I think on the slate is Washington at Denver.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be another high-scoring affair. RG3 is playing well. He's running the football. It's going to be very cold. Denver's going to be out for blood, no doubt. They just lost. But Washington, got some momentum going after they came back in the fourth quarter and showed, how potent that offense can really be.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the Bears, they're a 4-2 team. They're good. Both secondaries are just awful. Again, I think it's going to be a very high-scoring game. I just, I'm staying positive, and I think we can stick with them.
I think so too. Well, and then rounding out the Monday night game as well, the Sunday night game, Green Bay at Minnesota. I think Green Bay crushes. And then the Monday night football game, Seattle going into St. Louis again.
Seattle's going to crush.
I think it's going to be the road teams that take it, but you never know. I mean, that's why they play the games on Sundays and Mondays. But again, we want to thank Steve Mullins for directing the show today, and Phil Hargis. And Claire, it's good to see you again.
Thanks,
It's good to be
Robbie.
back, and I'm glad that you kind of brought the good spirits back to the Redskins, and hopefully, I know you probably be watching on your couch, or maybe Thirsty Bernie's on Sunday night. But again, it's going to be I think it's going to be a tough game for the Skins to kind of go into Denver. Denver coming off that loss.
The altitude over there.
I think it's going to just be really, really tough for the Skins to get a win in Denver. But hey, you know what? It's Mike Shanahan's homecoming. It's his first time back after, coaching the Skins, going into Denver. So really, who knows? But that's all the time we have for tonight as well. For Claire Markowski, I'm Rob Castro. Again, thanks so much for watching Fantasy Sports Review. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next